There is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. You'll hear stories about this and so much more right here on Supernatural Confrontations. So we're going to talk to Steve, son of a pastor, lifelong Christian, and he had an experience which I think you'll find absolutely stunning in a way that I don't want that. Folks, the supernatural is real. And if you've got a story, please email us at supernatural@lamarzulli.net. Supernatural@lamarzulli.net. Here's Steve with his testimony. You probably think your 401k is safe, that it's growing, that it'll be enough for your retirement. But what if it's not? Here's the truth, folks. Your 401k was never designed to make you wealthy. It was created in a corporate boardroom to shift retirement costs and investment risks onto you. Designed to keep your money trapped, exposed to Wall Street crashes, inflation, and uncertainty you can't control. Until now. Folks, Americans are taking back control by turning to real assets like gold. Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands protect your future by converting part of their retirement savings into physical gold. Talk to Noble Gold today and learn how safe and easy it is to roll over your 401k into a tax-advantaged gold IRA without penalties or headaches. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com to get your free wealth protection kit, including a step-by-step guide to get started. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. It's time to get your money out of the danger zone and into something real. And folks, get rewarded for getting started. Open a qualified account at noblegoldinvestments.com, and Noble Gold will send you 2 5-ounce Silver America, the beautiful coins free. Once again, folks, noblegoldinvestments.com. Folks, today we're going to talk to Stephen, and this platform is so great because we're bringing people that with stories and encounters and confrontations, and a lot of times they don't tell people. It just sits on them or maybe a few close friends. But with this platform that we have right here on YouTube, tens of thousands of people now are able to share and understand that maybe they're not alone. Maybe Stephen's story will touch a few of you out there, because I don't think it's that unique. Although I've never heard anything quite like this, I bet you there's other people that have had similar experiences. And that's what's so great about this, what we're doing now, Supernatural Confrontations. If you had a confrontation, shoot me an email, la@lamarzulli.net, and I will peruse it and probably answer you back, and we'll go from there. Stephen, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on the record.
Sure.
You're and I'll let you go in just a second, but you're a pastor's kid, so at Assemblies of God, and you grew up, with the Bible. I mean, that is your worldview. Just like after I became a Christian 42 years ago, my whole paradigm shifted. Everything now comes through a biblical paradigm, through a supernatural biblical paradigm. You mentioned in our off-camera little warm-up session, floating access, talking donkeys, feeding the 5,000, whatever. Those are all supernatural events. And as a frank supernaturalist, I believe in those. So, you're in Assemblies of God. Your father's a pastor's there. Every time a church is open, you're there. I understand what that's about. So pick up the story. Yeah. So pick up the story. Tell us what happened.
So, like I said, I was raised as a preacher's kid. Assemblies of God, they're very much believers in the supernatural. The gifts of the Spirit, speaking in tongues, interpretation of tongues, all that stuff. These things have always just been normal to me. Some people looking on the outside would look at what goes on in our church. And I've even seen people literally get up in the middle of church when somebody's speaking in tongues and they walk out the door. I understand that where they're coming from. But to me, the supernatural has always been real. I've never really experienced it like this until, my experience. But basically, I was sitting in a church service one night, and the sermon had to do with spiritual warfare. I was paying attention for the most part, not to the whole thing, but I did hear one part about where he was talking about, if the veil was removed from our physical realm and we could see the spiritual realm, it would blow our minds, as far as spiritual warfare and the battle between good and evil. And I I find that type of stuff extremely interesting. And so we went home that night, and I said a prayer. I was just like, hey, God, if this is real, let me see it. Let me experience what exactly is really going on. That was it. Said the prayer. Probably didn't really mean it that well. I did want to see it, but didn't think, excuse me, anything about it. So I'm probably 16 or 17, if I didn't already say that. Years went by. I was probably 18 or 19 years old, first or second year of college. And I had the beginning of my experience. I go to bed one night, I lay down. As soon as I fall asleep, it's almost like I'm awake again, but I'm not awake, and I'm not necessarily asleep. I'm just like in this dream state. That's the only way I can explain it. And I had about 7 of these experiences. Sometimes I could see what's going on from a view from up here. Like in my mind, I can see from up here. Sometimes it's just where I'm at in the bedroom. I'm laying in bed on my stomach, and if for some reason I used to feel safe if I could lift my head and look at my clock and see the numbers on my clock and tell what time it was. This dream state happened, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't lift my head and look at the clock because I was feeling these giant hands. Again, like I said, they weren't long, demonic, evil-looking fingers. It was just a hand like this, but just extrapolated out to like this. Very large hands. Both of them were on my back, pushing me down into the bed. It was immense pressure. I couldn't move. There's nothing I could do to break free from it. It wasn't painful, but it was very ominous and scary. I did feel like this was not godly. This is the most terrifying thing I'd experienced in my life to that point. It just happened. It just kept going on for probably 10 or 15 seconds. It felt like a lot longer, but that's probably all the longer it was. And then it stopped. And as soon as it stopped, I instantly woke up. My head popped up off the pillow, and I could see my clock, and I felt better. My mind was blown. I was like, what just happened to me? And I tried to wrap my head around it. I had absolutely no clue what the purpose of this was. Some time went by, a couple weeks, maybe a month. I don't really know, but a short amount of time went by, and the second occurrence happened. And it was very much the same as that one. I could see my room in my mind's eye. Things were just a little bit different about it, but it was my room. It was my bed. And the same thing happened. The hands appeared and pressed down on me. I couldn't ever see anything in the room.
Right.
I felt an ominous presence. I felt like it was evil. I never saw anything, never heard anything, couldn't smell anything. I just felt these hands pushing me down.
Could you feel the fingers? Did the fingers move, or was it like a? I mean, what is it? What does it? What did it feel like?
Just imagine my hands just pushing down on you as hard as possible. Okay. There was no gripping. There was no any of this. It just felt like hands. So second time this happened, couldn't raise my head, couldn't move. And then I woke up. Now I'm like, what is going on here? This happened, like I said, these initial occurrences happened about 7 times. The third and the fourth one could have been just like the first two. Either the third or the fourth one, a completely different situation happened. I'm laying in bed, I go to sleep, boom, I instantly get kind of woken back up again. And this time I feel like I was sleeping on my side, but these hands were now fists. And imagine this fist being pressed on your penis and this one on your backside. And just immense pressure, pushing and pushing and pushing. Again, it wasn't physically painful like I was screaming in pain, but what I felt was like something was trying to get inside. And the only thing I could do, I couldn't move or do anything else. I just locked down. Every muscle in my body fired, and I squeezed down as tight as I possibly could to keep whatever this was from being able to get inside of me. This happened for probably 10 to 15 seconds. And when it was over, it was over. And I woke up, and this time I woke up terrified, screaming for my dad. I needed some help. I didn't know what was going on. And my father, being an Assemblies of God pastor, a true man of God, in my opinion, just based on how I've seen him live his life and lead his churches over the years, took him a little bit, but he came in. He's like, "What's going on?" And I told him, and I didn't quite get the response from him I'd hoped. He was kind of dismissive about the whole thing. Maybe he was just super tired. It was the middle of the night. He's had his own supernatural experiences, nothing like this, nothing like UFOs or anything like that. But he explained to me one time where him and some men in the church had an encounter with a demon possessed individual. They watched this guy crawl up the wall backwards.
Wow.
If there's any such, anything else out there that's more supernatural than that,
Yeah, that's
it's pretty. Yeah. So he understands this, and I thought he would help me. I'm not saying that he didn't help me. It was just kind of dismissive. It wasn't the reaction I thought. So he did pray with me, and he went back to bed, and so did I. It was, like I said, it was probably the scariest thing I'd ever experienced. A couple more instances happened. Again, it was just the hands pressing me down in the bed. I couldn't move. The final time was the kicker for me, though. I go to sleep, and again, there could be days, weeks, or months in between these instances. There was no rhyme or reason to the timing. And the final one, I go to sleep and I wake up in my bed. I'm looking from up here in my mind's eye. I'm not levitating up here. I just see it from a view up here. My bed is in the middle of the room. My pillow has fallen off the edge of the bed. I'm kind of hanging off a little bit at the edge, which is odd because that's something from my childhood that I used to hate immensely. So I would purposely push my bed up against the wall. But in this dream, I was in the middle of the room, hanging partway off the edge of the bed. Yeah. These hands were there again. And this time I was laying on my stomach. One hand, again, these are large hands. They scooped underneath both of my ankles and cradled my legs perfectly. The other hand was up across the back of my shoulders, tipped me straight upside down, my head down here, over where between the wall and my bed, and my body went straight through the floor, just like the floor wasn't there. There wasn't an opening. There wasn't a portal. I just went through the floor. And as I went through the floor, I stayed upside down, and I could see back up towards my room. And I just watched through like a hole in the floor as my room just slowly got farther and farther away till I couldn't see it anymore. To me, that was what it's like when a soul gets taken to hell. That's exactly what I felt in that moment, in that time, understanding the difference between heaven and hell, understanding the spirit realm as I did at the time. I fully believe that's what it feels like. I didn't see hell, it was completely black. I just went into darkness. And as soon as there was no more light anywhere, I woke up. Absolutely terrified that I thought I was going to hell. As I told you earlier, my biggest fear is not being right with God at the time that I die. And my thing with that is my personal struggle. But the devil's always putting stuff in my head. If I said a bad word, or I had an impure thought, or I did something that was a sin to God and I died at that moment, I'm cut off. I don't truly believe that, but that's what the devil pumps into my head all the time.
I understand.
I thought that's what happened, and I thought I was going to hell. And I didn't know what to think. When I woke up, I was completely bewildered. So one thing that I didn't say to you earlier, Ellie, and I think that if you got a few minutes, I think it would be good to do this, is the older that I've gotten, I understand why this happened to me. I believe wholeheartedly that these experiences were sanctioned by God. He allowed this to happen to me because of the prayer that I prayed. I asked, little did I know how he was going to do it, but he answered. And it has changed my life for the better. It took years still for me to realize what had happened and how God's part was played in this. He did this to expose to me that the devil is real, and that God is real, and that heaven and hell is real. This is all real. Whether we, like I've heard you say, and like I've heard plenty of other people say, whether we believe it or not, it doesn't matter. It's real. And one day, the people who make that decision to trust and believe in God, they're going to see it. And so are the people who didn't. And so I think it's important with what you're doing is right now, and these stories that people are telling, is to show that it doesn't matter if you believe it or not. God is real, and so is the devil. And where you decide to hit your trailer is going to determine the rest of your life. So
let me ask you something, Stephen. Did you ever call out to Jesus in the middle of this, or wasn't that you were in control?
So I did not, and I fully understand. Even at that time, I was of the understanding that we as Christians have the authority over any demonic or oppressive spirit through the name of Jesus. 100%. It's biblical. It's not something we have to decide whether we want to believe it or not. It's there.
Right.
It says so. I didn't think about it at the time. Not only since I've started watching your videos and some of your compatriots videos out there in this world of fallen angels and stuff like that, did I realize kind of what was happening, and that I just needed to call out to Jesus. Since then, I have had other minor experiences similar to what I've explained to you today, and I have called out to Jesus. It was very hard. I couldn't say anything at the time. I almost had to just think it. And at the point that I finally could say his name in my mind is when it very wimpily leapt off my lips, and it was done. And it was a minor experience, but it was enough that I knew what was going on. And I knew I needed to test this. Like, does Jesus' name really work? And it does. I never questioned that, but I've never been in a situation like that where I had to go on it. Yeah. And it did. There's no doubt in my mind that Jesus' name will end any kind of evil experience or oppressive experience or anything. So,
Stephen, thanks so much for coming on the record. I mean, it's an incredible story, and I've never heard anything quite like it, with the very large hands and then being tilted like this. And I mean, and we know from people that have been abducted that, sometimes they go through the window, sometimes they go through the roof of the house, the ceiling of the house, whatever. It's quite unbelievable. And yet, you hear the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. These entities can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy our physics, both the good guys and the bad guys. And so I'll close this out. I'll give you the last word. Thank you for coming on.
sure. I've seen a lot of videos here in the last probably 5 to 10 years about people with their experiences like this, and just an eye-opening, being moved into an eye-opening direction of fallen angels and what the Old Testament really says about this stuff, and how it's pertinent, to understanding, what the Bible says. In the grand scheme of all of it, the one thing that God has laid upon my heart is, regardless of how interesting this new information that I have learned about over the years is, the only thing that really matters is our walk with God, and getting your heart right, and putting your trust completely in the Lord. Outside of that, there's nothing else really. I mean, I struggle with this daily. I am the most imperfect Christian out there, and sometimes I'd put money on that one. I'm close. I fight with it daily, but I know that the Lord is real, and I do put my trust in him, and I fight that battle every day. At the end of it, I still understand that I'm probably okay.
You are. It's all grace. That's why without it, none of us would get in. Stephen, thanks so much for being bold and courageous and sharing your incredible story. And I just want to thank you. And folks, I know that some of you out there listening have had similar experiences. Don't be afraid to write me, la@lamarzulli.net. And you might wind up on a Zoom chat, because it ministers to people. It's a platform. People can come here, and there's no judgment. There's no disbelief. We just go, here's the story, and that's it. And it's a great because it ministers to other people about the same thing.
Sure.
Stephen, thanks so much for, coming on. Really cool. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Suzanne had an amazing experience. In case you're wondering, that sometimes people with, who are mediocre at best as far as their talent, I'm not going to mention any names, but they rise to the top. Somehow they just rise to the top. How is that done? We know from Scripture that Jesus was tempted, and I'll get into that on the other side after Suzanne's done her testimony. But she actually had several experiences throughout her lifetime. We started off with this one because this is, in my opinion, just incredible. And it sort of solidifies what I've expected for years. I've heard the same type of offer, as it were, from other folks in the industry. So I think you'll find her testimony riveting and extremely revealing. So here's the deal. It amazes all of us that some people make it in Hollywood or make it in the music industry. And oftentimes there's people with so much more talent, but they're just sort of cast to the wayside. I mean, I remember chasing the rock and roll carrot here in Los Angeles, and I was in many different recording studios. I had producers. We had, we were at, I'm going to boast here. We were in the Fleetwood Mac room at Village Recorders recording. So, I mean, that's pretty much up there. And we were with a mainstream producer, and, and what we had sounded really good. And all of it, we got right up to the end, and the whole deal just fell through, and that was the end of it. That happened 3 or 4 times with us, with different labels. And looking back at it, it was the Lord saying, "You're not going there. I've got something else for you. You don't see that yet, but I've got something else for you." Suzanne, that's what happened. Thank you.
Yes. So I was in drama, and I had been in a couple of the small movies. And there were a couple of people that were kind of in this with me. And I'm not going to mention their names.
No. Right.
But when I went home for a weekend, I was in my bedroom, and I was laying on the bed, kind of just, thinking. And I had the experience where my hair flew and I landed on the bed in the same space that I was at. And I was like, well, that's really odd. And then I heard my voice, Suzanne. Someone was calling my voice in my own bedroom. And I turn around, and there was the most handsome man I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mm.
And he had a briefcase. And he said to me, I can make you beautiful forever. You'll look young for a long time, and I can make you famous. You know what I want. And I was just horrified, because I was like, well, this isn't necessarily Satan, but this is someone working for Satan. And my heart, I was like, I want God. But however, some force was moving my mouth and my lips to say yes, like that. It was like I could not control my own body. It was making my body say something in my heart I didn't want. And so I remember, as my mouth was starting to say this, I went, God help me. And God flew me out, and I landed on the bed in the same position I was in again. And I remember crying and crying. Now, I don't know if the other people I was with had a similar experience. All I can speak for is my experience. However, all 3 of them did become famous, and they are famous today.
If you definitely would all go, yes, we
all yes. So that's been interesting. And then later, after a year later, I had a boyfriend break up with me, and I was kind of down and depressed. And I was actually on an internship, and I was in the home alone where I was staying. And I had the same kind of experience. I was on the couch, just like, oh, I feel so sorry for a little pity party. Oh, I'm so sorry for myself. And I landed in the bed, on the couch again, and I opened my eyes, and there was an imp sitting on this chair, And he was just smiling like this. And he didn't say anything, but I knew I was getting the same offer again, that I could have the beauty and the whole thing. And I just went, God, you helped me before, help me again. I flew and landed back on the couch again. So I know that I've talked about, there's more people that admit that they have accepted and signed on the dotted line for their fame and their fortune. And unfortunately, I think that is a very real situation for a lot of people in Hollywood, politics, sports. I think it's really sad. And I hope that we all remember who's most important for us. And if you find yourself in that situation, remember that God can, even if you find your mouth being moved, remember God can help you. Just turn to God. Put all your focus on Him.
And let me just say something, because I know people, that's preposterous. Really? So once again, let's go to the guidebook of the supernatural. We'll go to our Bibles, right? And we know that Jesus is fasting for, what is it, 30, 40 days out in the desert by himself. And what does the enemy do? The dragon, Satan, appears to him, takes him to a high place and shows him in a moment of time, and I believe it's literal, because he can do that, all the kingdoms of the world, and then offers those kingdoms to Jesus. Jesus goes, no, thank you. It's the same deal. It's the same deal. It's slightly changed. Metascus modicide, they can appear as whatever they want to appear as. So, the guy in your room, I don't know who he was, the most handsome man in the world, just sign here, you can have whatever you want. It's the same thing. And this is what's amazing about stories like this, because what it does is it brings the supernatural confrontation right to people. Folks, if you've got an encounter like this, please email me, supernatural@lamarzulli.net, supernatural@lamarzulli.net. Suzanne, I'll give you the last word. Thanks so much for coming on the record. Powerful testimony. Please.
Well, I would just say that I hope that this helps everyone remember that God is God, and that we should put our faith in Yeshua, not in ourselves. Nobody is unique. My story is not about me. It's about all of us. And we all have to keep our focus on Him. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hold on. I'm here with a fan of the show. His name is Lee, in an undisclosed location someplace. And Lee, thanks so much for coming on the record. We appreciate it. Folks, we're really hitting a nerve with the show Supernatural Confrontation, because what we do is we open the doors and people begin to tell their stories. Some of these folks who have come on the record have never told anybody or kept it hidden down for 10, 20, 30 years, maybe even longer in some cases. And what's great about this is it gives normal folks like me and you a platform just to come on and talk and discuss. The supernatural world is real. And too often in our modern day church, it's all happy smiles and all this stuff. Meanwhile, there's maybe 30, 35% of the people sitting in your pews right now, pastors, if you're watching this, who have had encounters, sleep paralysis, encounters with angelic entities, demons. They've been abducted, they've been taken, they've had an encounter with a UFO, a gray, whatever it is. And so that's why Supernatural Confrontation, that's why we're here. The Lord has redirected our steps. It's a brand new show, and my inbox is filled with people telling their stories, and we try to get to as many people as we can. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on YouTube, Supernatural Confrontations. If you have an encounter, a confrontation, shoot me an email, la@lamarzulli.net. Lee, thanks so much for joining us. And, I read your account, and I've been in New Orleans. We talked a little bit before we started, hit the record button, and I couldn't get out of that town fast enough. It is a very dark, foreboding place. But give us the backstory. What happened? How old were you when you were there, and what happened?
Well, this was it was a casino opening up there, and I was doing a side job helping train a graveyard. And this was around 99, 2000, little while before 9/11. And it was I was working nights, and I worked for a week or so, and then I went had a day off, and I thought, well, I'm going to do the tourist thing. I went to the French border, walked around, saw all the different things, and it was quite interesting. I'd heard of a famous pirate, I don't remember his name, that had a bar down at the end of Bourbon Street, and it was supposed to be over 200 years old. So I'm into history, so I walked down there to check it out. Yeah, it was a really old building. There wasn't much to see, and it was a bar. Okay, it was no big deal. But on the way back, this is when it got really weird. I went to, I don't know, block and a half. It was before all the big businesses. And there was a shop, and it said voodoo shop. And if I didn't know what was going to happen, I probably would have prayed before going in there. But I had no idea what was going to happen. I was just plain tourist. I walked in the door. When I first walked in, I looked around, and there was all kinds of voodoo garb. And I thought, well, this is weird and interesting. And I made another step forward. And about that time across the room, I could see a doorway, a table, and a round sphere looking, I forget what they call it.
A crystal ball. A crystal ball.
Crystal ball.
Telling.
And when I noticed this, I felt like there was something there, but it was almost pushing on me. It was in front of me. And at least at the beginning. And I thought, well, that's strange. I just kind of walked forward. And by the second step, I felt so much pressure. I felt so overwhelmed, and I almost felt sick. So I decided I was going to leave, and I didn't run. I just walked slowly to the door casually, but I kept feeling this presence. It was heavier. It was heavy the whole time. I got to the door, opened the door, and I'm thinking as I walk out that this is going to be over. And it wasn't. I was and on the sidewalk, I still felt it. I started walking across the street, still felt it. I was at least halfway across the street, and whatever it was, this entity, this evil demon, whatever it was, pushed me. And I staggered as I turned around and looked. Of course, I couldn't see anything. There was nobody around close enough to be pushing me. Yeah, it was quite an experience. It was. I've had some other supernatural experiences, but that was the most intense, upfront, in person. I don't know how else to explain it.
Let me ask you something. Lee, you were a born again Christian at that time, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, you're just sightseeing, and I get it. I mean, you don't know what a voodoo shop is. This is my wheelhouse. There's no way you could get me to go into one of these things. But, unless the Lord directed my steps and go in, you'll see a woman there. You're going to pray over her and break the spirit that's her familiar spirit that's, residing in her. I would do that. But to wander in someplace like that. But, if we don't know, and that's what's so great about having you come on the record, because here you are, you're working at a job, you come out of that job and you're kind of sightseeing, looking at some stuff, and
Yeah.
And I get it. I've been there. They are alluring because it's sort of, you've never seen anything like it. Well, what's this? And you go in and you check things out. So this thing comes at you, it hits you, it pushes you, and it follows you out the door. And when it finally pushed you, did you almost fall? Were you in the middle of the street? Were there cars going by? Tell me that part.
There was people on the sidewalk and probably 2 or 3 people in the street.
Okay.
There wasn't you call any cars.
Okay.
I stumbled because I was taking a step when it pushed me, and it caught me off balance, and I stumbled. I caught myself and turned around. I knew right then it was an evil entity, and I knew that what got me is when I went in there, I wasn't in there moments, and this entity knew that I was a believer. It knew that it didn't want me in there. It's not making sense to get me out of there. And I didn't know what was going on at the moment. And so I obliged and left. But now, speaking to you, I almost think that I should have said something to somebody or done something, but I don't know what to do. And so it's real. And I thank you for letting me share it.
Well, I just thank you for coming on the record, and people need to understand that the supernatural is real. And sometimes it manifests in ways like with Lee, where you go into a voodoo shop and you're just, it's kind of like not really looking for anything, just, well, what's this about? And all of a sudden you're confronted, and there's supernatural confrontations. You're confronted with the face of evil, the face of enemy, even though you don't see him or it, he's there and he's pushing you and he wants you out because you have the spirit of a living God within you, and he doesn't like that. That's his turf, and he wants you out of there. Lee, wow, I'll give you the last word, and thanks so much for coming on the record. We appreciate it.
I just want to thank you, and people, please believe that it's out there. The end times is here. They're starting to show themselves, and they're starting to take over if they can. Keep your faith. Hallelujah.
Amen. Thanks so much, Lee. Really appreciate you coming on the record.